Elections are won or lost on trust and distrust, not the economy, health, education or the environment. Welcome to this electoral midterm look at Australia's political leaders. With wars in Gaza, the Ukraine, COVID entering yet another wave and climate disasters across the globe, we live in strange and uncertain times. And when it comes to politics and government, trust and distrust are always centre stage. But today this is truer than ever before. Without trust, a candidate struggles to win, but with distrust, they lose easily. As Barack Obama famously said, if people can't trust their government, all else is lost. On the other hand, if a political leader has trust, they can be visionary. Without it, they're just a negotiator. Trust breathes life into imaginative and bold policy initiatives. Trust gives leaders political and social licence to navigate in uncertain times and to take swift, decisive action when disaster strikes, be it economic, social, military or health disasters. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese made a positive impact on the world stage, but suffered a humiliating political defeat on the Indigenous voice referendum. Peter Dutton has struggled to make headway as opposition leader, but in recent weeks is like a man reborn, taking the refugee release issue up to the government and dominating not only the media, but also the policy agenda. So, at this midway point in the political cycle, who's winning in the trust and distrust stakes? Well, that's what we're here to explore. Let's start with who is Australia's most trusted politician, and if that's changed since our last research in March 2022. I can reveal that the politician Australians trusted the most in early 2022 is still the politician they trust the most, and that is Penny Wong. As Foreign Affairs Minister, she's been a shining beacon of consistency and moderation in the Albanese government. She individually reshaped Australia's role in the Pacific and has brought welcome intelligence to political debate. And Australians trust what she's doing. Last year, Anthony Albanese was the second most trusted politician. Has he managed to hang on to that spot? The simple answer is no. In fact, there are only 3 politicians who are more trusted than distrusted. Penny Wong, the face of the No campaign in the Voice referendum, Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, and Treasurer Jim Chambers. So the Prime Minister is no longer on the cherished most trusted list. So who fell off last year's list? Anthony Albanese, Tanya Plibersek, and the Greens leader Adam Bandt have all now become more distrusted than trusted over the past 18 months, while former Premiers McGowan and Berejiklian and Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie have fallen off our radar. So why do Australians trust Penny Wong? And why do they trust Jacinta Price? In their own words, Australians say Penny Wong speaks honestly and with conviction, and that she's respectful of others' views. They say she's honest and more intelligent than others, and she's more focused on the best outcomes for Australia than political point scoring. I want to pause there and say that those reasons could be the mantra for trust in Australian politics. And the reasons that Australians trust Jacinta Price further flesh out the mantra, that she speaks the truth plainly and logically, is compassionate, stands for the middle ground. If so few politicians are trusted, then who are the most distrusted? And have the rankings changed since our last research? Well, Australia's most distrusted politician is Peter Dutton, up from second place last year, while former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, despite virtual invisibility, is the second most distrusted. Crucially, Anthony Albanese has gone from the second most trusted politician in Australia to the third most distrusted, with the exclusion of Clive Palmer, who as a former politician is not ranked. Rounding out the top 5 are Barnaby Joyce and soon-to-be former Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk. Interestingly, last year none of the most distrusted were Labor politicians. This year, half are. So there's no doubt being in government shines a light on the leaders. Let's take a closer look now at Albanese and Dutton, head to head. Looking purely at trust, the picture's remarkable. Effectively, only 2 of the top 10 most distrusted politicians have any trust at all, Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. So why are they on the net distrust list? The answer is because they have more distrust than trust. This is a perfect example of why measuring trust alone is misleading. Peter Dutton has modest trust, that's the green bar on the left, but a very high level of distrust, the red bar, giving him a net distrust score, the black dot, dramatically worse than everyone else's. The Prime Minister's trust and distrust are pretty much line ball, but the Prime Minister needs to decrease his levels of distrust before the next election. Here at Roy Morgan, we've analysed many leadership battles and established that trust and distrust determine the outcome of elections. Looking at both leaders in more detail, we see the Prime Minister has almost twice the trust of the opposition leader and 30% less distrust. The net effect is that Albanese has a net distrust score of -3, while Dutton has a net distrust score of -14. That's almost 5 times worse than the Prime Minister, putting Albanese in a strong position electorally. Why do we say that? Because the comparison on this chart is remarkably similar to the picture immediately before the Victorian election. The election was held just 13 months ago, and our analysis of trust and distrust prior to the state election showed Daniel Andrews was always going to win. Opposition leader Matthew Guy had no chance with a distrust score of 19% and a net distrust score of -15. And here's Peter Dutton with an identical net distrust score and a distrust score 1% worse than the losing Victorian opposition leader. On the other side, Anthony Albanese has a net distrust score of only -3. That's 2 better than Daniel Andrews. So why is Anthony Albanese trusted? In their own words, our respondents say he shows integrity, a genuine commitment to improving Australia, that he has a positive vision, he's transparent and plain talking, and he exhibits an authentic leadership style. Interestingly, the reasons for Australians distrusting the Prime Minister go more to his decision-making than his character. Reasons like he's implementing things that will ruin our country. He rolls over in the face of opposition and fossil fuel lobby pressure, or he made bad decisions for Australia. This is very different to Peter Dutton, as we'll shortly see. The opposition leader's trusters could be viewed as more partisan than the Prime Minister's. So respondents who trust Peter Dutton give their reasons as he's the only politician with integrity. The Prime Minister might as well live overseas for all he cares. Others say he has no hidden agenda. He's more in tune with Australians and is not a puppet for the unions. One person spoke for many, saying that Dutton exposed the Voice for what it really was. But when it comes to reasons why Australians distrust Peter Dutton, unlike Anthony Albanese, most have to do with his character, like self-serving, having little compassion, an opportunistic politician, and a reactionary racist, and only interested in what he sees as political gain. Now, building on the Victorian election comparison, in an even more deeply worrying trend for Peter Dutton, his scores are moving very close to Scott Morrison's just weeks before the coalition suffered a disastrous defeat at the 2022 federal election. Having pondered all the volumes of different responses, the different words and expressions and emotions, I believe the issue of distrust with our current 2 leaders is much less personal than we've seen previously and more ideological. The leaders are proxies for the great political divide we're seeing emerge on so many issues, The Voice and Gaza being just the most high profile and most recent. Finally then, let's have a quick look at business leaders. Andrew Forrest, Twiggy, was the only business leader to record more trust than distrust this year. The bad news for Qantas just gets worse. with distrust in recently departed CEO Alan Joyce far exceeding trust. Rounding out the top 5 most distrusted business leaders in 2023 are mining magnate Gina Rinehart, recently departed Optus CEO Kelly Bayer Rosmarin, Rupert Murdoch and Gerry Harvey. So in general, Australia is becoming less trusting and more distrusting. Alarmingly, the nation's overall lack of trust and deep and toxic distrust have both increased since last year. As I frequently say, we're at risk of becoming a fragile nation. That cheery note brings us to an end. For a deeper dive into this extraordinary dossier of quantified qualitative data on all the leaders and additional data on their parties, or just to learn how Roy Morgan collects and measures trust and distrust, ask Roy Morgan or contact Julianne McCran. For now, thank you for joining me and I hope to see you next time.